Hi, John here, the hat guy. Today, I wanted to talk about some stuff that's going on in the world, current events. I'm not going to call it news. It's not. It shouldn't be, if you're paying attention at all. So what's going on in the world today? This is the second week of March, 2020. And unless you're living under a rock, you're probably aware that there's a panic going on about this coronavirus, and people are buying toilet paper apparently as a result of this. I still don't see the connection there. They tell me that, well, it's because if you're quarantined, you want to make sure you have toilet paper. Okay, I agree. That's a good idea. It's also a good idea to have food, but nobody seems to be stockpiling food. I don't get it. The idea of a quarantine is a valid fear, but personally, I don't think the virus is a valid fear. It's media hype. You look at the numbers of how many people have been infected and how many people have died, and compare that to any other run-of-the-mill virus that goes around this time every year, and you'll find that this one is relatively mild as far as how many people die. The symptoms tend to be severe. It's like a severe cold or flu. I had the flu in December, and it was the worst one I've ever had in my life. It was brutal. And more people died from that in the month of December alone than have died worldwide from the coronavirus to date. So I don't think it's what it is. And I've talked about that before. So that's enough of that. Let's just suffice it to say that I have survived the great toilet paper panic of 2020, at least so far. So yesterday was Tuesday, and it was another Democratic primary day. Well, it was a Republican primary day too, but there's really only one Republican candidate that matters, and that's President Donald Trump. The Democrats, however, have two people on the ballot that are pretty much running away with it. There's a couple of people here and there in addition to them, but the only two that really matters, one of whom will win the Democratic nomination, is either Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. Joe Biden is 77 years old and clearly having at least early signs of some sort of dementia. Bernie Sanders is 78 years old and will be 79 before the election. And from what I understand, he has a heart condition. Joe Biden is not a good choice simply because the man is not stable anymore. You can argue all you want about whether he would have been a good choice 10 years ago. I'm not going to make that point. Personally, I don't think he would have made a good choice then, but at least he would have been a fairly stable, somewhat sane choice if you are persuaded to the Democratic side of the fence. However, today, you can't say that about him because things have changed, and his mind is starting to slip. And if he can't handle the stress of running against Bernie Sanders, what's he going to do running against Donald Trump? And worse yet, what's he going to do as president? Nobody seems to be thinking of that. So what's the alternative? Assuming Donald Trump is not your alternative. Your alternative is Bernie Sanders. Well, Bernie Sanders clearly hates this country, hates everything about it, hates every single solitary aspect of our government, and wants to change it, and is pretty open about that. To deny that that's what he wants is you simply can't, because that's what he's running on, is the fact that everything's corrupt and everything needs to be given away free. Bernie Sanders is 78 years old and has never worked a day in his life other than in public office. He's so out of touch with the average American, it's crazy. He's more in touch with people like Fidel Castro of Cuba and all of the the leaders in China and Russia and Venezuela, who were the worst of the communist dictators, And that's where his mind is. That's what he wants for this country. And there are people lining up in droves to agree with him. So what you've got is, it boils down to two choices. Well, three choices. Either you like the country that you're living in today and the fact that the economy is strong and wages are up and everybody seems to be safe and secure and happy, in spite of the fact that everybody's panicking over this virus epidemic, which I don't think is even qualifies as an epidemic. It's certainly not qualified as something dangerous if you are relatively healthy. Having said that, I have several friends who have issues with their immune system. Yes, it's a deadly virus to them, and my heart goes out to them on a daily basis, but most every day common sickness is a life-threatening event for them because they've got a reduced immune system. And it's like that for various reasons. But that doesn't represent the overwhelming majority of the population. That's maybe 2 or 3% at most of the population. And that's where your death rates are. It's people who are prone to being sick anyway are going to get this and not recover from it. But those are the same people who would get this and not recover from the flu or any of the other epidemic panics we've had in the past. So that's not really an issue if you're paying attention. But looking at it strictly from a political point of view, you've got Donald Trump and a pretty fantastic track record over the last 3.5 years, in spite of the fact that he's had amazing opposition every single step of the way. Or you've got the Democrat side. And let's be honest, between Joe Biden, who's clearly in the early stages of dementia, and Bernie Sanders, who's certifiably insane, or perhaps he's maliciously evil. I don't know. Either one is a fitting description of him and his policies. But when it comes down to November and the election, you're going to have two choices. You're going to have the choice of insanity or malicious evil, or you're going to have the choice of Donald Trump and what's good for America. It's not a big choice in my mind. Yet there's a surprising percentage of the population of this country who still thinks that any idea that comes out of the mouth of a Democrat is a good one. And to be honest, I've seen maddeningly few good ideas come out of the mouth of a Democrat in my entire life. There have been a few. I will give them that. I even liked, there was something that Barack Obama did. I about fell out of my chair when I realized, okay, he did this, and that was not a bad thing. I was shocked. It was the one and only thing he did, and that was try to put a cap on out-of-control credit card spending, which was going crazy, and still is. He made an effort in that regards, and I applaud him for that. But literally everything else the man did was maliciously evil. It wasn't crazy, it wasn't insane, it was maliciously evil. And these two, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, following right in his footsteps. If anything, they're far worse than what he ever did. And I think he was dangerous for this country. My big fear is that the conservatives and the more moderate people in this country will come up with the idea, well, Donald Trump's doing well, everybody seems to like him, look at the numbers in his rallies, and they won't show up to vote, and one of these other two lunatics on the left will win the day simply because of a lack of interest of people on the right. That's why we got Bill Clinton elected twice, and that's why we had Barack Obama elected twice. A lack of interest on the right. But you got to stay vigilant with this. Go out and vote. Go out and vote. Do your first opportunity to vote. Go out and vote. Encourage all your friends to vote. And if you're on the fence about this election, and you're trying to figure out which side should I go? Should I go with Demented Joe or Crazy Bernie, or should I go with Donald Trump, who may say things that hurts my feelings but gets the job done? Swallow your pride. Think with your brain and not with your blind following sheep-like attitude that so many people in this country seem to have. Coronavirus is a prime example of that particular dementia. and think about what's going on. Weigh the odds. Look at it. Stop and think about what's going to happen. If you follow Bernie Sanders' idea of let's give everybody everything and don't charge anybody anything, well, who's going to pay for all of that? Somebody has to pay for it. The government doesn't have all the money. The people have all the money. And if the people are no longer working and everything's being given to them free, what's that tax rate going to look like? The one thing they've both agreed on is that they promise, and it's their biggest campaign promise, and it's probably the only campaign promise that they'll keep, is to raise everybody's taxes, especially the middle class, to an astronomical rate. Why would anybody in their right mind, and I guess that's the thought there, in their right mind, why would anybody in their right mind vote for Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders in today's day and age? I simply don't get it. It's literally come down to a good versus evil scenario. You got on the one hand, let's use Star Wars as an example here. On the right side, you've got Han Solo. He's brash. He's arrogant. He speaks in the ways that you don't really care for, but he gets the job done. And on the left side, you've got Darth Vader, who hates everybody and is pure evil. There's your scenario for the 2020 presidential election. Darth Vader or Han Solo? I'm going for Han Solo. You make your own decision, but make it a thoughtful, wise decision. And I'm John. I'm the Hat Guy, and that's my opinion. Have a good day.